The link between our thoughts and our body is very well established. However, it's not well known. When we are criticizing ourselves or others, this can bring about diseases such as arthritis. When we have anger, either boiling with anger, burning with anger, anger creates infection, and it certainly manifests in the liver, which is where we see liver disease come from. Guilt always seeks punishment and leads to pain. So people that are continually in pain, there's a lot of physical explanations for that as well. There are a lot of people that are in pain because they experience a lot of guilt and they have not overcome that guilt, so the pain remains. It's much easier for us to change our thinking before we're in a state of dis-ease than once we're already there. So let's talk about how some of these thoughts create illness in our body. If we just have one thought that's negative, do you think that that creates illness in our body? No. Fleeting thoughts do not create illness in our body. It's a pattern of negative thoughts. It might be you think it every day or every once in a while, but as long as it's continually there, that's what eventually will manifest in the body. So I'm going to start by giving you an example of a client that came to me and how I helped her physically as well as emotionally. And then I'll go into explaining other sicknesses and conditions and how we can help them physically as well as emotionally. So this teenage girl came to me and she had painful periods. And she'd been to the doctor and the doctor said, "We'll put you on the birth control pill and that'll stop the cramping." I went on the pill for that reason, to stop the cramping. It works, but you're creating a number of other challenges by going on a drug. Her mother wanted to know a more natural approach to helping her with her painful periods and her PMS. So I knew that our painful periods come about from candida, which is an overgrowth of yeast. And that comes about from being on drugs. So if she'd gone on the birth control drug, it would have exacerbated the symptoms, as well as too much sugar. And that's a very common thing amongst teenagers, right? So we'll often see teenagers with painful periods because they've got candida. So I knew that she needed a candida cleanse, maybe two. And I also thought, okay, I'm going to explore how she is thinking about things and whether there's an emotional connection. So when there are problems with the menstrual cycle, it always means that the individual is rejecting being feminine, either in its totality or a portion of being feminine. So I said to her, "Do you have a problem with being a woman?" And she said, "Well, every time I get my period, I do." And I said, "And tell me the reason for that." And she said, "Because I'm never going to have children. And every time my period comes, I think, what a waste of time." And I thought, wow, no wonder this is a problem for her. Because when we resist, that's when sickness sets into the body. And every time that period came, she was resisting it. So I said to her, "What made you decide that you weren't going to have children?" And she said, "Well, I heard 2 labor stories and they were horrible." And that was it. I just turned, and meanwhile, I asked what the stories were because I was just curious. They weren't even that bad. They were nothing compared to what I went through. But I didn't tell her that. I didn't want to make it worse. So I said, "But in today's society, we have so many options for having babies. Would you want to have a child and not give birth to it yourself?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Oh, interesting. So how would you like this to work?" And she said, "Well, I'd like to adopt when the child is past the tough years. So around 4, maybe 4. And she said, "I need to have a really supportive husband that helps me with this whole process." And I said, "Okay, you make that your vision." At a teenager, she starts visualizing that now. That's what she'll get. And I said, "You visualize how it's going to feel being with that easily to control child and your very helpful husband. You visualize that. Your period, when you get it, is for you to cleanse your body. Every time a woman gets her period, it cleanses her body. Men don't get that advantage." So I said, it's an advantage to you. And so when you look at it, say, "Thank you. Thank you for coming and for cleansing out my body of any toxicity." So bottom line is, she no longer had any pain with her periods. Now, did that happen because of the Candida cleanses she did, addressing it at a physical level, or did that happen because of the emotional work we did? We'll never know. But the bottom line is, if we only look at one aspect, we're not getting the whole picture. So we have to always look at things physically as well as emotionally.